Welcome to the Why on Earth Community Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron William Perry, and today we're visiting with Kate Wilson, the Vice President of Environmental and Social Responsibility at Vail Resorts. Kate, it's such a joy to be able to visit with you today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. I'm really excited. We have so many threads and pieces to talk about as it relates to stewardship, sustainability, health and wellness, in the work that's being done by you and your team at Vail Resorts. It's really extraordinary.
Yeah, I'm excited to cover it all with you today.
Super. As a company rooted in the outdoors, Vail Resorts has a special responsibility to protect the unique mountains where it operates. In her new role as Vice President of Environmental and Social Responsibility, Kate Wilson applies her 2 decades of experience to leading this critical work. Kate now oversees all 4 of the company's responsibility pillars: sustainability, investing in the future of the industry through inclusive access, providing community support, and supporting team members through the Employee Foundation. Under her leadership, the company reached 100% renewable electricity across its North American operations for the 2nd consecutive year and is on track to achieve commitment to zero, the bold goal to reach a zero net operating footprint by 2030. Before her promotion to Vice President in 2023, Kate served as the Senior Director of Sustainability. Representing Vail Resorts, Kate has led sustainability discussions at the Bloomberg Sustainable Business Summit, Google's Travel Summit, Colorado Governor's Tourism Conference, and MT 2030, a coalition of mountain towns. Prior to joining Vail Resorts, Kate developed and led the greenhouse gas and sustainability strategy practice at the Cadmus Group for 10 years. She earned her Master of Applied Science in Environmental Policy and Management degree from the University of Denver and a bachelor's degree in environmental policy from Colby College in Maine. Kate is the co-lead of Vail Resorts Women and Allies Employee Resource Group, chairs the National Ski Areas Association Environmental Committee, and leads the Mountain Collaborative for Climate Action. Kate was recognized by the Denver Business Journal in 2020 on the 40 Under 40 for her work at Vail Resorts, and she is also a director, a board member, and past chair of one of our most favorite nonprofits here in the area called Resource Central, which I look forward to asking you about as well. So Kate, it's just tremendous to have this opportunity to visit with you and to explore and unpack all of this work that you're doing through the corporate mechanism of Vail Resorts. Can you tell us a bit about the reach, the geography, the locations of the various properties and resorts that you're working with, and how that interfaces with different, wilderness and ecological systems?
Sure. So thanks for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation. So Vail Resorts, we have now 42 owned and operated resorts around the world. We have 3 in Australia. We have 2 in Switzerland. One just closed last week, so we're really excited about that. And then we have several all over North America, and then of course Whistler Blackcomb in Canada. So pretty much covers the gamut in terms of ecosystems, in terms of habitat, in terms of communities, as well as sort of the availability of, I guess, what I'll call sustainability mechanisms. So if you think about, we have emissions goals and a waste goal and habitat goals. So you think about, those are very tailored to each community where we operate. Recycling options, for example, in Pennsylvania might be very different than in Park City, right? So you think about some of those things, and so we do have the benefit of sort of a centralized network where we can pilot things at different types of resorts and then think about, okay, now let's roll this out at scale. That's one of the benefits of the enterprise in that way. And you do have to really be mindful of what's the local community dynamics, what types of things are available. So we get the benefit of that enterprise and, sort of still lean into local so that we can figure out how that applies in the best way.
Yeah, I was so struck and impressed reading through and looking through the most recent environmental and social responsibility report, and we'll actually include the link to the document in our show notes. Your work is covering sustainability, inclusive access, community support and grants, employee foundation, EPIC wellness program, commitment to zero, EPIC progress. It's, to me, I knew already before preparing for our discussion that Vail is doing some good work, but when I saw the report, I was legitimately astonished. I thought, wow, this is so impressive. And I was hoping you could kind of walk us through the framework and all the different areas where you're having impact and often exceeding the goals and targets you guys have set for yourselves.
Yeah, so I want to be really clear that that's our teams, not me. Mm-hmm. I have the privilege of helping develop the strategy, of thinking about making sure we're hitting, for example, you think about commitment to zero net operating footprint by 2030 across those resorts. So that includes zero net emissions, zero waste to landfill, which is the hardest one, and zero net operating impact on forest and habitat. And so you think about, I am sort of in this centralized role thinking about, okay, I build out the roadmaps and the strategy with a couple key people on my team. And then just as if not more key are those that are in resort, that are out there on the ground working with our frontline employees, making these programs come to life. So I just want to be really clear that I get to be a part of this, but by no means is that progress attributed to me. So I think that's, I would kind of zoom out a little bit, and I think the reason why we do this work at Vail Resorts is because it's tied to our do good value. We are absolutely a values-based company. It is not a poster on the wall somewhere in the kitchen that you never see again. It is how we make decisions every day. It's operationalized, and we think about how will this impact all of our many stakeholders, and the environment is one of those. And so we think about all of those pieces. So for me, it's about what do good feels like in each one of those things. So I feel really privileged that I get to do something that's so aligned with my values of connection, of growth, of developing others. That's why I do it. So if you think about the way we approach each of those programs, it's rooted in those values. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important to sort of start with. And then you think about, so commitment to zero, for example, we had been doing environmental work for a lot longer. We launched that goal in 2017. Mm-hmm. We'd been doing environmental work since 2006 and before, but more at an individual resort level. So for example, when I joined about 6 years ago, I think we had 14 resorts, right? And now in the last 6 years, we have now 42. So It's a pretty big jump. So you think about, we had environmental teams, but when we got to 2017, we thought, okay, we've reduced energy by 10% here. Then we've set another goal. We've, helped with restoration after this fire. We've done all these different pieces. But how do we come together and sort of sing from the same sheet music, right? Mm-hmm. And make the biggest impact that we can. Mm-hmm. And so we looked at that and thought, okay, well, rather than thinking about like what are the baby steps that we could take to get to somewhere good, could we kind of invert that and think about what would it take? What types of goals would it take for companies to set for us to solve climate change? Mm-hmm. And that's how we set commitment to zero. So we thought, okay, could we have a zero net operating impact across this huge enterprise, even as we're growing, right? We knew we would grow. So could we do that, and could we, have this impact at scale? And so that was how it happened, and we didn't have that day, here in 2017, here's the exact roadmap, right? We said, okay, we're going to do this. We're serious about it. We dedicated $25 million to the energy efficiency side of that project, and said, okay, here we go. The next year, we brought this wind farm online, we entered the deal to bring it online. It didn't come online until 2020. Those deals take multiple years, but really looked at like, okay, we're serious. How do we signal that? What is the thing that we're going to do? And then really started making progress, against that. from that point. And again, using that idea of everybody's kind of looking at the same strategy and then going to their resort and figuring out like, okay, these aren't LED light bulbs yet. We need to deploy capital to do that. How are we doing with our recycling? Oh, we're in a place where we don't have recycling in our community. How do we figure that out? So applying that local piece. And then, yeah, from that perspective, right, we are very much on our way. And I'm glad that the listeners will get to see that report because, all of those numbers are pretty impressive about what the teams on the ground have done, right? And bringing the frontline folks into that has been, it's been amazing to watch. And then I would say, on the responsibility pillar, sort of describe this new umbrella. The reason that we're doing that is we're thinking about sort of the environmental and the social together, right? And how do we think about having communications in our communities where we're having roundtables about community issues that include climate change, right? How do we bring the sustainability team in with the community team and be really bringing those conversations together to be a strong partner, to be able to share some of our lessons learned with our communities and have these open conversations with them and learn from each other. So that's really why we brought it together. So yeah, you mentioned some of the other groups. We have our employee foundation, which is something that helps employees in times of need or hardship, also provides scholarship grants. So that's something that we really think it's important to take care of our team members. And so that's where that comes from. And then, the community piece. So this is about, grants and building these bridges and partnerships and real relationships in our communities of what are the challenges we're all facing together. We believe very strongly we're not going to solve any of this alone, right? And so it will take all of us. So we feel like let's have our bold stance. Let's be accountable and make as much difference as we can, but let's bring others with us and like, where can we partner? Where are we working on the same things? And then, I'm really excited to talk about inclusive access and to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So our lane now kind of owns the external piece of that. So what that means is, building partnerships with Boys and Girls Club of Chicago, with the National Brotherhood of Snow Sports, right? We firmly believe the future of the sport is inclusion. So how do we build a roadmap to, similar to Commitment to Zero in terms of the approach, but how do we do that to make sure that we are taking actionable steps, every quarter, right? To make sure that we are shifting that and inviting others into the sport who haven't historically, enjoyed it. So the inclusive access programs, we do adaptive access, some youth programs, as well as adult access. So you think about, what does that feel like? That's a kid getting off the bus at Wilmot for the first time and seeing the stars, right? That's, so for me, again, it's about it's that value coming to life. It's feeling, and these programs and all under the responsibility pillar, that's how we're approaching it, of like, how do we invite more people in? How do we protect the places where we are, and be a good partner and support our team members in our communities in the meantime.
It's so exciting. I want to emphasize and encourage our audience to check out the report, the Environmental and Social Responsibility Report, because I'll tell you what, doing what I do, podcasting and working with the Y on Earth Community Global Network of Ambassadors and others, I'm directly connected to and hearing from people who are doing all kinds of good and great work, and I'll admit this connectivity and knowledge flow helps me not get depressed, helps me stay hopeful, positive, optimistic, and energized moving forward, doing work we can in the social and environmental arenas. And reading through and looking through the report, it was a really cool experience for me. It was uplifting, I'll say that. So I want to encourage folks to check that out for sure. And, I'm excited to dig into a few of these threads, and I want to just acknowledge, I've been skiing since I was a kid and have skied at many of the Vail Resorts ski areas for years and decades. And I've been a fan of what I've known Vail to do, and with a couple of my previous businesses, we actually did business directly with Vail Resorts on the recycling side and on the food procurement side of things. This was about a decade or more ago. And so I'm a fan. I'll put that right up on the table.
We appreciate you.
Yep. And one of the things that's really struck me about Vail, and some of the other leaders in the ski and wilderness tourism, active tourism space, is the I see it almost as a triangle. There's this nexus where ski resorts in particular, this industry in particular, is among the most sensitive probably to things like climate change. Mm-hmm. And so you've got that going on. You've got the commitments and the incredible systemic work you guys are doing going on. And then for me, the third leg or point on the triangle is you have this incredible opportunity for messaging and communication to all of these people from around the world who come to your resorts. And wow, what an amazing platform, for systemic change making. And I was hoping you could talk with us a bit about that.
Yeah. So, I think for us, it's about using our voice for good. It's thinking about, when you sit on the chairlift, we have several, you pull the bar down always, and then you have, we have commitment to zero signage, right? So some of them have a map, some of them have other things, what's my epic burger? Where am I going to get that for lunch? And then sometimes it's this commitment to zero thing. So we think it's really important. Sustainability is not a side thing for us. Yeah. It is as important as any of the other business decisions that we make. It is operationalized. We deploy capital against it just like we would, go through the same robust process that everything else does. But again, that is part of the reason I joined this company. After being a consultant for Fortune 500s, I saw, companies that were doing this the right way and companies that were not. And so when I was looking for sort of my next thing and I wanted to go in-house, my personal sort of mantra has been to make the biggest impact on climate change that I can. And so I looked at, okay, what an amazing opportunity to kind of scale this, right? And think about the impact that you can have, knowing also it's a growth company, right? So we're looking to what's the next thing? How do we bring others in? How do we learn from them? How do we deploy things that we've learned across all of that? So of course, our guests are part of that, right? And if you go to one of our restaurants for lunch, let's say you're skiing the back bowls of Vail, right? You go to Two Elk, which is I think 4 miles as the crow flies from the loading dock where eventually the compost is going to land. So just bringing it to life, you think about, okay, you have a banana at lunch and you put, we have employees that sort the waste because at every location there's different rules. So we don't expect you as the guest to know. You're enjoying your ski vacation, tromping around in your boots. You don't want to be standing there like, which thing does this go in, right? So we have an employee take that, put it in the compost, and then you think about, it goes on a haul cat, which we have specially retrofitted the bed to sort of have a dump truck bed, which then takes it to the top of the gondola. The gondola takes it down. We've designed a special freight system. So while guests are on the gondola, we have these freight cars that are also loaded. So it'll take it down to our loading dock. And then underneath the Arabella Hotel, we have a whole station under there where we make sure everything is properly sorted. It goes in a truck off to Vail Honey Wagon, which is our compost partner in Vail, turns into compost, and then we buy it back. And in the summer when we do our revegetation projects, right, we put it back on the land and to regenerate the soil, that we operate on. So we look for everything to sort of be this circular system, and then we tell the story, right? That's why we want people to read that report. We want to make sure that that people are seeing these stories and we're bringing it to life for them of what does that mean. It is not easy to get to zero waste at these places that are geographically diverse. Many are very rural. It's a real challenge to do, but we think about the actual waste reduction, the efficiency of buying less and bringing only what we need onto the mountain to the first place, right? We don't need to use diesel to get it up to Two Elk, and then let's just bring only what we need. And then from that place, right, let's make sure it's circular. Let's recycle as much as we can, compost as much as we can, and then buy it back, right? So that it's that closed loop system. So that's part of it, right? That's the sort of on mountain experiential piece. And then while we do that, we have signage everywhere so the guests can understand. We can add this in the show notes too. We posted a video on LinkedIn earlier this year of a video of that sort of banana peel journey of going through Vail, and so we can make sure that listeners can see that. But again, to bring it to life of how do you actually make this happen, and to share that with others. We actually made that video during a climate conference, a Mountain Towns 2030 climate conference in Vail last year. And we took our competitors and the towns with us on the tour to show them, like, here's how you do this. So that's the other piece, is that this is not some competitive advantage for us. Climate change is an existential threat, not only to the ski industry, but the world, right? And so we see that as like, okay, if we figured some of these things out, we do not have all the answers, but if we figured some of these things out, let's share that so that people can catch up more quickly, right? We don't need to have everyone kind of have to pilot it themselves. And so with that, right, in 2019, we started the Mountain Collaborative for Climate Action. So it's us, Alterra, Boyne, Powder, which we call the Big Four in the ski industry. I think we represent at this point over 76 resorts. And so you think about, right, how we can share lessons learned and bring each other along, you know, on the journey. And so that's really important, as well as advocacy. So that's why I chair NSAA's environmental committee. Same thing, like, can we share some education? Can we bring others with us? Some resorts are little and they don't have the resources to have a full sustainability person. Maybe that's a third of someone's job, right? So can we share, lessons or pieces of information that are coming on regulatory things, or, you know, with each other, right? And so that's important, as well as, like, you know, going to DC and at the state and local levels too. But again, using our voice for good and speaking up on the things that, you know, we need to reduce waste. We want to, make sure we're reducing emissions in the right way. So that's something else that we kind of think, like, yes, we're pretty big in terms of the industry that we're in, and we want to make sure that we are, you know, before this, I was also a climate lobbyist in DC, so a little biased towards that. But yeah, making sure, right, we have a seat at the table and can help push that forward. So we do it with our guests kind of throughout the day as they're skiing, with signage and other things, and they'll see, right, you can't go to our resorts and not see kind of the way we sort food, and please put your tray here, we'll take it from you. And then, and then also, you know, making sure we're talking to legislators and lawmakers around the things that are important to us.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And just to help, maybe some of our audience might be curious to get a grip on scale. If I'm recalling correctly, it's around $3 billion a year. Is that the right number for sales for Vail Resorts total?
I think it's like 8.
Is it 8? Oh my gosh, the numbers I was looking up recently were, wow, okay, 8. That's quite a bit bigger than I had in mind. And offhand, do you know how many folks visit the resorts total each year?
I don't, but there's, so in 2 weeks I'm going to the National Ski Areas Conference to do this environmental committee meeting, and that is where for the year they announce aggregate ski area visits. Okay. So that's a good place to look. And I'm sure we can add something to the show notes on that.
I'm curious, because it's such an interesting way to reach people. And, you know, one of the other things I've observed in the ski industry, particularly over the last, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 years, is a transition to emphasize other things in addition to the snow sports, like mountain biking in the summertime or what have you. And I'm curious if you might speak to us about the kind of view into the year-round picture at these beautiful locations. And I'm also wondering if you guys are sort of thinking beyond mountains at this point, and I don't know if you can share that with us, maybe at the behind the scenes segment for the ambassadors, but I'd love to get a sense, because obviously skiing, snowboarding, snow sports are central, but not the only thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think, you know, what's core to our model is sort of this subscription model, right? So thinking about, you know, you buy a pass before the season in exchange for like amazing value in all of these resorts that you get to access. And so I think part of that, as we think about climate change, right, that is something that can help in terms of, if somewhere's having like a slower start to the winter, but you know, your local mountain has a lot of snow. That's a great way that you can go closer to home. And then once it's really snowy in Utah, right, you go there for spring break. So it's a way that there's always somewhere awesome to ski. And I think we've had it now that you can ski year round, because in Australia, right, that season is opposite to us here in North America. So that's obviously what we're known for primarily, but I think also these are beautiful places that people want to visit. So we have leaned into that in terms of some of our summer activities. So you mentioned mountain biking. You know, Whistler Blackcomb has an incredible bike park, an incredible program there, as do many of our Colorado resorts. So yeah, I mean, we want people to be able to enjoy these places year round. And so you think about that. Some of our mountains have, coasters. Some of them have even just hiking, right? I mean, I had taken my kids. We went up to Breck in the summer when they were little babies, and you can ride the gondola to the top, or ride the chairlift to the top, and you can hike around, and there's signage up there. If you're, my little kid was 2 then, so we didn't do this, but there's a rope course, there's all sorts of things that you can do. And so having these beautiful places in our portfolio, we do want to encourage, guests to come all sorts of times of year. We also have the Keystone Conference Center. So that's an opportunity too, where maybe folks that haven't been as familiar with the sport, right, could come and have a conference in this beautiful place and then realize, oh wow, like I have never thought about myself as a skier, but I'd love to come back in the winter and try this in this place. So it's for many of those reasons. But yeah, there's a lot of activities. Some of our resorts do have some golf. So yeah, it's a way to, we're passionate about the outdoors in general, right? So how do we get more people sort of outside enjoying these places? My own bias is that once they do that, then they want to protect them, right? Because you've had that experience, you've had that connection, with family or friends, and that memory and that experience. We call it the experience of a lifetime, right? But being out there and having those moments, we also have a lot of weddings in the summer. I personally, before I was with Vail, I got married at Beaver Creek. Which is super fun now to get to ski in uniform past the spot where I got married. But it's right. So again, it's like these places aren't just beautiful in winter, and so being able to think about how we can share that with guests year round is important to us.
I love it. This is causing me to think of some of my favorite memories. And Breck, just for those who maybe don't know, Breck is Breckenridge, one of the resorts here in Colorado in Summit County, as is Keystone. I've actually been at a conference at the conference center, and one of the things I love about skiing at Beaver Creek, I don't know if you guys are still doing this, but getting the cookies at the bottom of the
cookie time is very important.
The best.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely love it. And the aspens there are so fun to ski.
So beautiful. Yeah.
Well, I have to ask you a question that might be taboo, given your role, but I'm curious, and if we have to save it for behind the scenes or whatever, we can, but do you have a favorite resort in the whole network?
Oh, that's tricky. I'm like instantly thinking about my team would be like, hey. I don't have a favorite for all time, but I will say this, we'll go with this past season. I got to ski, and it's tied to the memory, right? But I got to ski this year at Park City, and we have done, in partnership with Joseph Lamont White, who is an artist, we had done something called the Gondola Galleries. And so we have this beautiful, diverse representation of snow sports on we've wrapped a couple of our gondolas. And I got to ride on the one that had this beautiful, we can link this too.
Cool.
But this beautiful artwork, showcasing the future of the sport is inclusion. And so for me this past year, like that was a really special moment. I would made the lifty weight. I was like, I really want to ride on that one, right? It was just cool, right? I'd read about it, I'd seen it, we did put it in the report, but to be able to just go out there and see that this is how we're showing the world that we're going to change the sport, right? And so that was just like a really special memory for me from this year.
I absolutely love that. So that's Park City. That's Utah.
That's Utah.
Yeah, where the powder is even finer and fluffier than here in Colorado.
It can be. It can be.
It can be. Well, this inclusion piece is so exciting. I'd love to learn more about the National Brotherhood of Snow Sports and what's happening with Boys and Girls Club of Chicago and maybe elsewhere. And I'm struck by, for many folks from all backgrounds and walks who perhaps are more urban dwelling, urban working, the trip to the resort, the trip to the mountains is for many of us the most direct and profound connection with wilderness and nature, as you were mentioning earlier. And especially, I imagine, for some of our brown and black brothers and sisters and friends in certain urban communities to be invited into that opportunity in a way that might not otherwise be available is extraordinary. And I was hoping you could talk with us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I think it's exactly what you said. It's being invited. I think that's a key piece of it. Is for some people who maybe have never thought of themselves as a skier, right? That's just not something that was part of how they were brought up, and so it was just something they hadn't tried, right? And so I think we have many programs, and in the report this past year, we mentioned that we served over 11,000 youth in the past year in these programs.
Wow.
And so through several clubs, right, we partner with to provide soft goods and transportation and meals and lessons and rentals so that you can have that full experience and kind of remove some of those what could potentially be barriers. To really get on snow in a comfortable way and try it. And so that's something that we're really proud of having that. And we want to grow those programs. We want to think about, career pipelines. We want to think about, how we can be a good partner in that way. I got to ski with one of these groups through NBS, National Brotherhood of Snow Sports, this year, and I got to meet their president, Henry Rivers, and talk through, what are some of these things that we need to kind of work through to make this more accessible. And we're doing that through these programs, right? So I got to spend the day at Keystone with them, and we talked to the youth there about, what it's like to be a ski instructor, what it's like to work at one of these resorts, right? Showing that this is a possibility for everyone, and what that might look like, and having themselves see themselves in this space. And so that was, it was an amazing day, but it's like, more of that, right? So looking at how do we do that and how do we lean in, and we were able to host NBS at Vail, and I think 2 years ago, or last year. And so, working to do that type of thing of really being in partnership, really listening, really understanding how we bring others in, and what does that experience feel like, and how could it feel more welcoming. But I think it does go down to that point that you said of inviting people, and listening. So it is something that we're working on very actively, and thinking about, right, how can we make sure we're driving that forward. It's really important to us as a company.
It's so impressive and encouraging and inspiring. And one of the other things I saw in the report that was also really impressive and exciting is the community food security work that you're doing. And I noted a stat in the report: 27,000 pounds of food made available for Colorado residents just this past year, if I'm understanding that correctly. Is that I don't know if it's a total figure or not, but regardless, it's a lot of food. And wow, like who would have thought that a ski resort company would be, quote unquote, in the business of helping create more food security in some of the communities who really need that help.
Yeah, I mean, we think, right, we are in partnership with our communities, right? If it's key to the health of our resorts and the communities, right? That we are taking care of the people that live there. And so we look at those things, in some areas we provide childcare, in some places obviously we're working on affordable housing, right? We look at these things, and food security is certainly one of those, as well as mental health, right? We look at those real issues, and how do we be a good partner in those spaces, and again, listen to the local community. What is needed? Where is it needed? And our employees often are huge parts of those communities, right? So we do feel that responsibility to make sure that it's sort of this holistic approach.
Well, speaking of mental health, this triggered for me a connection that might not be obvious, but might be a little more obvious in a moment, with Dr. James Gordon, who's been on the podcast doing work around mental health for the entire nation of Ukraine, given the warfare trauma and hardship that so many folks there are experiencing. And he's done work in many other regions of the world as well. And I also noticed in your report, you guys have done something for the people of Ukraine also. Amazing. Like, I was not expecting to see that in there. Can you tell us about that?
I can tell you about that. So we Yeah, so as part of our zero waste to landfill goal, we won't obviously throw old uniforms in landfill. So we've looked for all sorts of other solutions. And it could be, some of them, so we'd sort them all. So some might have, oil stains on it. And if it does, right, we work with a vendor in Nebraska and we turn that into insulation for our buildings. If it's a garment, though, that is, still very usable, but perhaps we switched vendors or something, right? Then we did end up sending significant amount of those to the Ukraine. And to make sure that they were used on sort of frontline folks, so utility people and healthcare workers, and just they're very warm, waterproof garments. So making sure that when we're looking at where should we send things, that was obviously a timely moment. It was like, we don't, sure, this could be insulation, but it could be used by somebody right now. Let's do it this way. So we did send them there, which was great.
So amazing. Yeah, it's so impressive. I also was struck by the phrase in the report, relief when life gets tough. And, here we are in Lyons, Colorado, where about a decade ago, there was very intense flooding that certainly affected many folks in the community. Just in this region, we have not only flooding, but also fire that affects a lot of people. And of course, the science connects the dots with the climate and energy loading in the climate through carbon loading of the atmosphere and so on. And this is a real thing. And to also, be, again, quote unquote, in the business of providing relief when these kinds of disasters strike and when folks encounter really tough times. I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah. So even thinking about the mental health piece, right, that you just talked about, right? We think supporting people holistically on our team is really important. And so we think about, an example, the Marshall Fire, right? That was in this area and a couple of years ago, and it was our headquarters is fine, but was in that spot. And so several employees lost their homes. Yeah. So an example of the Epic Employee Foundation, right, is that we helped provide grants for folks who had to move out on a moment's notice, who, it was right after Christmas. Their kid had, maybe one toy that they had. Everyone left the house with no shoes on, and that was it, right? So heartbreaking moments in people's lives. And so it's something that I'm really proud of at Vail Resorts, because thinking about, we can give a small amount from our paycheck, and you think about if someone's in that moment, that you could really help. And watching that happen, right? Watching someone go home for their dad's, last birthday celebration because they're terminally ill. Watching, people be able to have a hotel while they're trying to figure out their house. They're small grants, but in that moment, right, that can mean everything to somebody, and just that you're seen, right? So you think about that mental health piece of just having that moment of shock and grief and whatever, I can't presume to know what that would feel like, but whatever that is, right? And just to have somebody reach out a hand to be like, I see you. This is a tough moment and we're here. I think the other piece, you mentioned this before, but I think it's important, this Epic wellness piece. So Dr. Corey Levy is an incredible team member on our team, and he runs the Epic wellness programs, and is, our employee assistance program is really key. Again, living in these mountain communities, right? There can be hard things to go through. And so just knowing we offer our employees mental health support, as well as any of their roommates or people that they live with, because we understand, that those around you can have a big impact on you as well. So, I mean, that to me is an amazing thing. But it shows you, again, sort of that value of we want to make sure people are well first. And obviously working in the climate space for, 2 decades, I think it's really important, right? I think about the personal resilience of, you have to be okay first to be able to then serve, to be able to help, to be able to lean into these issues, climate, equity, all these things are hard. And so I think it's really important that you do, I understand your audience is interested in that, right? But take care of yourself first so that you can then keep going. I've seen so many people in the field kind of burn out because they put their whole selves into it. And climate change is it's going to take everything we have, but you have to be resourced to be able to give at the level that you're going to be able to do so sustainably.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, and it's such a profound service in the network of community to provide people a greater sense of safety and security. I mean, what that does for us individually and at the family scale and in the neighborhood scale is extraordinary.
Right, and it's that connection, right? Mm-hmm. Connection and community, and I think then you do feel stronger. You do feel safer. You do feel like you can do more, and it's that impact of, all of these things will take all of us, right? Yeah. And so we think we can lead in terms of, let's put some bold things out there. The future of the sport is inclusion. Let's go for that. Okay, we're gonna have zero net impact by 2030, right? And then figure out how to drive towards those things in partnership with our vendors, our communities, and our team members.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely beautiful and impressive. Let me take a brief moment and remind our audience, this is the Why on Earth Community Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron William Perry, and today we're visiting with Kate Wilson, the Vice President of Environmental and Social Responsibility at Vail Resorts. And I want to take a minute to be sure to give some gratitude and shout outs to a few of our supporters who make our podcast series possible, as well as the rest of our regeneration, renaissance, and pathways to planetary prosperity work throughout the entire Y on Earth community network possible. And this includes Chelsea Green Publishing, Waylay Waters Hemp-Infused Aromatherapy Soaking Salts, Profitable Purpose Consulting, Earth Coast Productions, Patagonia, Josephine Porter Institute, Dr. Bronner's, Edaphic Solutions, and of course, want to be sure to mention our Simple Gardening Wisdom video course offering that has been put together and made available in partnership with many of the aforementioned companies and organizations. You can go to whyonearth.org to get to the gardening video course. It'll help you whatever level you're at, whether a beginner or an advanced green thumb. And want to also be sure to thank our ambassadors, our growing global network of ambassadors, many of whom make a monthly contribution to the Y on Earth community to support all of this work. And if you'd like to make a monthly contribution or join the ambassador network and you haven't already, you just go to whyonearth.org, find the Become an Ambassador page and or the support page to set all of that up. You can also go to Patreon, Y on Earth Community at Patreon to do this, where we've got a number of special goodies and offerings for you. And in any instance, if you choose to give at the $33 or greater per month level, we will happily send you a monthly shipment of the Waylay Waters biodynamically grown hemp-infused aromatherapy soaking salts to help you in your own wellness practice as you're engaged in this wonderful regeneration, stewardship, and sustainability work. And of course, the hemp we work with comes from 3 wonderful regenerative and biodynamic farms right here in Colorado: Metacarbon, Elk Run, and Sustainable Settings. So many thanks to everybody. And of course, one of the benefits of joining the Ambassador Network is you get access, exclusive access to a whole library of resources, recordings from workshops, seminars, and symposia, recordings from our online monthly meetups, and the recordings of our behind-the-scenes segments with our podcast guests, where we get to discuss some really exciting things that are not included in the main podcast episode. So be sure to join if that's something you'd like to be able to access and be a part of. Many thanks to so many in our community. And I wanted to circle back, Kate, on the work you're doing educating tomorrow's leaders, because this is a whole nother layer in the mission-driven phenomenon that is Vail Resorts, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the culture of Vail Resorts is that we're a leadership company. Mm-hmm. We invest significantly in our team members and in their development. It is a reason why when I switched from consulting, I wanted to be in-house because that was part of it. Like helping a team develop and grow and helping them see their own potential and unlocking that is one of the greatest joys of my career, I would say. Sort of a byproduct of the actual work, right? But getting to do that is incredibly gratifying. And so seeing folks, I have people on my team who, like 12 years ago, were the entry-level folks who were learning about sustainability and who were recycling cardboard, right? They were working at Vail Mountain, recycling cardboard, buying a baler, right? And then now they are some of the key leaders on my team. I was able a couple of weeks ago, we had a supplier summit conference to work with our suppliers around sustainability and some of the other things we do, and really kind of put our heads together on cool, innovative stuff we can come up with. And they were the keynote speakers, these two men. So it was like amazing pride for me to sort of pass the torch and watch them take their turn at leading. And I have so much faith in them at this point. So that is, again, it will take all of us, right? So any way that I can serve, and thinking about, I don't need to be that person anymore, right? Like, I don't need to be that person on the stage. I've had my turn. How do I coach somebody else to be confident and understand how to put together a speech, understand how to motivate a crowd? That's a different way that I can serve, right? It doesn't have to be me anymore. So how do I help someone else have that experience? So that has been really exciting for me, and then enables me, right, to have the capacity to take on equity and some other things that I wouldn't have been able to. So that's been something in the last year, especially, that I'm proud of and excited, to watch the whole team get to that next level and take on more. It's exciting.
That is so amazing. And speaking of leaders, I have to give a couple quick shout outs here. My dear friend, Brad Lidge, Brad and Lindsay Lidge Family Foundation support our work, and also Theodore J. Mallon Philanthropies, Ted Mallon, an experienced businessman who provides some advice to me and the team from time to time as well. And of course, Blaze Carrig. Blaze and Leslie Carrig have been supporters of the Y on Earth Community's work for a couple of years now. And Blaze, grew up in the same town in New York as my parents. They've been friends all these years. And I remember hearing from Blaze when we were chatting not too long ago about how he just wanted to ski, and in his 20s or whatever. And one thing leads to the next, to the next, to the next. And of course, he ends up being one of the executives at Vail Resorts, who had a significant hand in developing the company to where it's gotten, and setting the stage for much more to come. And one of the things I so appreciate about Blaze is he takes the time to ask the tough questions and go to the tough places where it's going to improve what the organization is doing and capable of doing and building capacity. And he's provided that kind of input, insight, and support to the Y on Earth community, no doubt about it, over the last couple of years. So a big shout out to Blaze as well. And
for connecting us.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. Yep. We're hoping we'll get Blaze on the podcast at some point. We'll see if that comes together. I was also really excited to see a couple things in the materials sector, the partnership with Eco Products and the partnership with Pepsi, specifically also including upcycling some of the plastics into Adirondack chairs, which are one of my favorite things to come across while I'm skiing when I need a little break.
That's right. So my parents actually live in the Adirondacks now, so I really love that for many reasons. But yeah, I mean, again, like thinking about how we work with brands that have similar goals, and come up with maybe at the beginning sometimes they seem like crazy ideas, right? But like, how do we disrupt? How do we come up with things that don't exist yet? That's the whole game here, And so we have Pepsi has been an amazing partner in this work, and thinking about zero waste to landfill. So that wrapper program came to be during COVID, because obviously our food offerings in our restaurants were significantly reduced at some points to nothing. And so we were really focusing on, what's the quick snack you can get without contacting humans. And so candy bars and chips and stuff took on a larger role at that point. And so we looked at that and thought, okay, well, that's not the heaviest thing in our landfill stream, right? So maybe previously that hadn't been the thing we were going to focus on quite yet, because it was like, okay, well, but that year it made a lot of sense because we didn't have leftover fries. We didn't have, a bunch of things that were larger in the waste stream previously. And so, we worked on upcycling these wrappers through Pepsi and a partnership with TerraCycle. We made them into Adirondack chairs, as you mentioned. Also some tables. So we have sort of commitment to zero patios in a couple of places. And then also we made them into a couple terrain park features. Oh, wow. So there's a Mountain Dew one at Breck. There's one at Park City in our park, in our terrain park. So I think that was pretty cool too. So right now we're coming up with like, what's our next thing that we're going to make together. But again, like innovative partnerships like that make a huge difference. Eco products you mentioned also. So we knew as part of the journey to zero, we would need to figure out, how do we close the loop, right? So I mentioned in different communities, all of the rules are different, but they have compostable cups, they have recyclable cups. So in places where we can't compost yet, because the community doesn't have that, we'll use a blue stripe cup, which is a recyclable cup. In a place where they can compost, we'll always use that. And then that's part of our transition, right? In a lot of places, not everywhere, because if you think about a hut's never going to have a dishwasher. So there's going to need to be some single-use items, but we're reducing those everywhere we can. So then in partnership with Pepsi, right, we have commitment to zero durable tumblers, so that you just put that in the dishwasher and that's the cup. You don't have to drive anything up on the snowcat or down. It's so transitioning to durables where we can. But there are places that doesn't work. And so making sure that we have this partnership where we can, if we have to use a single-use item, it is the best single-use item to close the loop in that community. So each of the resorts have sort of buying guides that our team has put together in relationship with procurement. So looking at, okay, if I am in Park City, which type of cup should I buy for this hut that doesn't have a dish pit? Or this restaurant doesn't have a dish pit yet, but it's going to in 2 years on the plan. So between now and then, we're going to need a solution. What's the best solution we can use? So that's been really important too, right? Because before that, there was, we had some more single-use plastic, which is now, it's single-use plant-based plastic through eco products. So again, sort of that good, better, best, like switching to, we'd like to get to durables everywhere. On the journey to that, what can we use that's the best choice? And making sure that we're doing that and it is complicated, right? Because it's not just like, oh, buy this everywhere. Yeah. You could buy a compostable cup in, Keystone, but they can't compost the cups in Keystone. So then it would go to landfill, right? So actually a better option there is a recyclable cup, because that could be recycled. So that's, the type of complexity around it.
I have to ask, because you mentioned terrain parks. Okay, so you're probably a pretty good skier, really good skier, maybe a shredder. Do you hit the terrain parks?
So I have 2 little kids. One it just turned 7 and one's about to turn 10. And they were all skiers. My husband snowboards, but they are very interested now in going in the terrain park. So that has not been, how I grew up. I more grew up, you sort of just ducked in a straight line, which I do not do anymore, but when you were little, right? And so now my kids want to go in the terrain park. So now I'm going with them.
Exciting. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the good, better, best makes me think also of your core values, and it's so beautiful. I'm going to just say it, unless you know it by heart probably and can say it instead. Either way, I'm happy to read it. I've got it right here.
You go for it.
It's to serve others, do good, have fun, be safe, do right, be inclusive, and drive value. I mean, what more do we need, right?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, like that's not a side thing either, right? Like that is why I joined this company. After being a consultant, right, I was looking at where is a place that I can, again, have the biggest impact on climate change that I can, and that I can do so in a way that's aligned with my values and my purpose. And so looking at those things of how can I help diversify our sport? How can I help support our communities? while making the biggest impact on climate change. Honestly, like, it's a privilege for me to do this work. It doesn't feel like work to me, because these are the things that are honestly part of who I am. So being able to do that at Vail Resorts, where I can do it at scale, and I can lead a team, have the honor to lead a team and learn from others. There's incredible leaders at Vail Resorts that I have the privilege of partnering with and learning from, to innovate, right? And I think the fact that we are a growth company and we look for these opportunities and we're not scared of that, we do so in a very responsible way, but thinking about, we started, when I started, we had 14 resorts, and that felt big, of like, oh, we're going to get to run this sustainability program across these. And now being able to do that and have it also be about equity, have it also be about supporting employees at 42 resorts. It's an honor for me to get to do that. And again, like, it is not me, right? It is the people behind the scenes every day, making sure that banana peel is getting to that loading dock, right? Making sure that we're in the community listening and having roundtable discussions and taking that back and thinking about our grants and our programs in that way. And building these new partnerships, thinking about bringing new folks into the sport and what does that feel like, and what does feel welcoming? How do people want to be invited? What is that, how do we need to change things so that feels like something they want to do for their lives, is a dream job for me.
Beautiful. Absolutely wonderful. Well, Kate, it is such a pleasure and honor and privilege to be able to have this chat with you today. And I know in a bit here we'll transition into our behind the scenes segment for our ambassador network. If again you want to join the ambassador network, go to ynrs.org and click on the Become an Ambassador page to get your journey rolling and underway. And before signing off here from our podcast episode, Kate, I just want to thank you for taking the time to visit with me today and open up the floor. If there's anything else you'd like to share and say with our audience, please, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I think being in that like-minded community, climate change is going to take every single one of us. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but thinking about, what are those things every day? What are those things that it does matter, right? What are those things that you can do, that you can inspire others to do, that you can help educate and bring people with you on the journey? I think, for me, it's about that. And you said something, that stuck with me about sort of this way it's not depressing, right? And for me, I have taken it as my life's work to think about how I can make an impact. And so as doing that, especially, being a mom, I decided that a long time before that, but especially being a mom and being responsible for 2 baby humans in this world and looking at like, what will it be like for them? I want them to be able to play outside. I want them to be able to ski. I want them to have the experiences that I was lucky enough to have. And so, I just think it's about like, I'm excited to be in this community and to talk about those things, because we all need to sort of, what's the boldest goal we can each take in our own lives and work towards that. And then with community, right, you kind of have this multiplier effect. And I know like the audience is all around the world, so that's really exciting to me, to be able to just spend time with them and with you. So thank you.
It's my real pleasure. And Kate, I just realized this is a false ending, because there was one other thing I definitely wanted to ask you about and I didn't yet, which is your work volunteering with Resource Central on the board there. And you were just recently the chair of the board. And when you mentioned the kids playing outside, it made me think of yards and lawns and pollinator habitat and all the amazing things happening with this nonprofit that is a beloved nonprofit to many of us in the community locally here. Can we take an extra minute or two to talk about Resource Central?
Of course we can.
Cool.
This is a nonprofit that I love, that's really trying to sort of bring conservation to everyone's doorstep. So I'm glad you mentioned it, because it is a way, right, that people can take that step on their own. So there's many programs. Some of the more famous ones are Garden in a Box, which is our plant by number local gardening program. So if people are in Colorado, they can sign up for the program. We also will come and remove sections of lawn. So we're trying to remove lawn and kind of replace it with native plants, with pollinators, with that type of habitat. So there's several different gardens you can choose from. And then you can have part of your lawn removed, and then you can plant one of these amazing gardens. Mine's in year 4, so I'm very excited for it's just starting to come up and to see what it looks like this year. But they're beautiful. And again, right, leaning into that, like, how do we make an impact right here today? The nonprofit also does, teaches kids how to do energy audits in schools to save their school money, and also have that mindset of turn the lights off. Is the heat on over the summer, right? Like, just planting that kind of seed of how do you think about conservation differently. There's a Water-Wise Lawns program. So there's, where we come adjust people's sprinklers and really think about like, slow the flow, right? There's all these different programs. But so I would encourage people to look at Resource Central. It seems very in harmony with the work that you're all doing. And right, is one of those sort of actions you can take in your own footprint and thinking about your impact. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Cool. Thanks so much, Kate. Well, what a pleasure visiting with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It's been great to be here. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
The Y on Earth Community Stewardship and Sustainability podcast series is hosted by Aaron William Perry, author, thought leader, and executive consultant. The podcast and video recordings are made possible by the generous support of people like you. To sign up as a daily, weekly, or monthly supporter, please visit yonearth.org/support. Support packages start at just $1 per month. The podcast series is also sponsored by several corporate and organization sponsors. You can get discounts on their products and services using the code YONEARTH, all one word with a Y. These sponsors are listed on the yonearth.org/support page. If you found this particular podcast episode especially insightful, informative, or inspiring, please pass it on and share it with a friend whom you think will also enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. And thank you for being a part of the Y on Earth community.